Hello Zane Gang, Dead Spikes here. Today I will be going over the top 5 tips I have for Borderlands players. This will mostly be towards beginner Borderlands players, but maybe some of you experienced players need this too. We will be going from tip 5 to 1. Tip 5 will be the least important one. Tip 1 will be the most important one. Without further ado, let's jump right into this one. Tip number 5, do not run multiple versions of the same weapon type. What I mean by this is don't run a bunch of SMGs, don't run a bunch of shotguns, don't run a bunch of ARs, sniper rifles, pistols, etc. You're going to be burning through ammo really fast because they all use the same ammo type, right? Well, if you put like an AR on, an SMG, shotgun, sniper kind of deal, that'll make it so you don't run out of ammo so fast. So, have a pistol, have a assault rifle maybe, and then a shotgun, SMG. Having 4 different types of weapons will make it so you rarely run out of ammo as long as you keep refilling at the stations. But if you run a bunch of crossroads or cutsmans or butchers, you're going to be running out of ammo because you're using the same weapon types. That is tip number 5. Here we go on tip number 4. Tip number 4 is learning how to dodge. When fighting bosses and stuff, don't just stand there and take the attacks they're going to do. You should be moving out of the way, jumping around, trying to make it so they can't hit you. Tyreen is a great example of this. When she hits the ground, she sends out that spike path that'll hit you if you're not dodging it correctly. Show you again what I mean.
Personal space. Need some personal space.
Now when she gets up, whenever she walks, she'll send a spike path towards you. Or that. Don't just stand there and take it, right? You should be moving out of the way so you can't get hit. A lot of bosses have stuff like that. I see some players just standing still. As unbelievable as it is, I see it. So that was tip number 4. Please watch out for projectiles. Here we are on tip number 3. Tip number 3 is learning how to double trigger, I call it. I don't know what else you'd really call it. Anyways, basically with characters like Moe's, Flak, and Amara, you use grenades, right? Zane, you don't because you double ability. But to use your grenades, a lot of people just stop fighting. Now, you don't need to do that. I'll show you what I mean. So, I have my normal setup, right? On my mouse, I'm using my shock laser exploder here. Now, you don't have to be shooting mid-shot and just stop, throw a grenade. You can actually hold the buttons and throw multiple grenades. Right? That'll make it so you can just constantly chuck grenades in combat. Now, silly as it sounds, I do see it a lot that people are stopping mid-fire to throw grenades. You don't have to. Just learn to move your fingers around a little bit more. And then you can deal a lot more damage that way. There you go. That was tip number 3. Here we are on tip number 2. My tip number 2 is use different elements. Learn to use the correct elements when fighting bosses and other things. Learn to use shock on shield, fire on flesh. Frost can work for pretty much anything. Corrosive on armor. Radiation on shield on enemies that are resistant to shock like Kilovolt and General Trunt. And etc. Just learn to use your elements correctly. If you don't know how to use them, you can go into the info of each weapon and it'll tell you what they're good against. Katagawa Ball is a great example. He has armor and then shield on his health bar. So you use a corrosive weapon to break the armor, use a shock weapon to break the shield. That is how you will get through bosses and enemies the fastest. There you go. That is tip number 2. Tip number 1 is key bindings. Now this is mostly for console players, but in your options and your controls, you can set your key bindings if you come over to controller. Now you can switch the button scheme over to classic, which is the same exact thing pretty much. I normally just switch it from default, but you can also just switch it to classic and you don't need to worry about anything. But you can switch your weapons to the D-pads. So like up is 1, right is 2, down is 3, 4 is left. And that way you know what weapon you're switching to whenever you want to switch. Now sadly, you have to disable toggle firing mode when you do this. But if you want to use that, you have to switch it to Y. If you were to do that, you cannot buy ammo from the machine unless you switch it back to secondary use. This is the only thing that sucks about this key binding setup. But I don't ever use any weapons that toggle firing mode. But if you do, like the Dictator's one that you have to use toggle firing mode, it's just switch that to Y and take off your next weapon button. But then when you want to buy ammo, either switch this back to Y or just buy them individually. I'll show you what I mean. So I always have it like this. Now when I go into my weapons and I have them set up specifically, so shock is the first weapon, fire is the second weapon, the third is kind of random, but the fourth is always corrosive. I always know that shock will be up on my D-pad on all 4 of my characters, always. I always know that fire is right on my D-pad when I'm playing, so I know when to switch to like fighting flesh enemies. I don't have to Y, you know, hoping I'm pressing the right combination to be able to get to my right weapon. This one's just my high DPS weapon normally, and then the fourth one's always my corrosive weapon on all 4 of my characters. So if I'm fighting an armored enemy, I know how to switch to it right away. I don't have to worry about running through my weapons. I can switch to my Brainstormer, corrosive cutsman, fire cutsman, my helix. I know how to switch to all of them just by memorizing my key bindings. I don't have to press Y. Oh, there's the right one. Oh, no, that's not worth it. It's really bad to play that way. It'll kill you a lot of times by switching to the wrong weapon. Just set up the key bindings and you should be fine. That was tip number 1. There you go. That was my top 5 tips for Borderlands players. If you already knew all of these, you are a god. And if you can think of another tip to leave for people, please drop it in the comments below. If you did not know these tips, I hope I helped you out in some shape or form. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you have not yet, subscribe to the Zane Gang, and I'll see you in the next one.